Apocalypse Gaming.
Hi there my friends, and welcome back to my series on moulding and casting. This will be episode 2. So we're moving on to actually casting the bases in this one. Now when it comes to casting, we need our mould, which I have here. If you've not saw part 1, go back to part 1, click here and that'll take you to part 1 if you've not already seen it, and that'll show you how I went about actually making this mould. So moving forward, we need to get resin. Now I've used a couple of different resins, both of which I'm quite happy with, but I've started using a different one recently because I've got a feeling, looking at it, it's got a slightly higher detail retention, plus it's cheaper for the same volume. So the first resin though I want to talk about is Tiranti's BiResin G26. It's a nice resin. I've had no major issues with it, been very happy with it, but it's slightly more expensive than the alternative that I'm about to show you that I went on to. But if you can't get the second one, you can probably source the first one. Go to Tiranti's website, you can get it there. But the other one that I'm using is from a company called Maragon Arts and Crafts, and it's Fastcast is the resin that I'm using. Fastcast. Now, a couple of things I like about this, let me move the mould out the way, is A, the cost, because it's cheaper than the other one. I feel that it holds a slightly higher detail retention. It has a similar pot life of around 5 minutes, maybe is slightly longer if you're lucky, but it's about 5 minutes, which is the same as the BiResin. Although the BiResin's details I think say 5 to 7, but in experience it's about 5 minutes on both. They have a similar decasting time as well, which is around 20-25 minutes time, depending on the temperature and humidity of your working area. So in that way they're both performing very similar as well. But what I do like is actually the containers that the Maragon comes in, or the Fastcast comes in. You can see here the separation of the resin. With the BiResin, because it's the metal container, no matter how much you shake it, you don't know if you've really got a good mix. With the Fastcast, because it's this see-through container, you can give it a good shake and see the milky texture. Now if you haven't used this for a while, you will find that all your resin filler is down here and the rest of the material is up there, and it takes a good 5, maybe 10 minutes of shaking to get a real thorough good mix and get all the stuff that's been stuck to the bottom off it. I can't see that when I'm doing the BiResin, I can see that when I'm doing this. So I mentioned quickly pot life and I mentioned demolding time. Pot life is the time that you have from when part A and part B first touch each other to get it out of the pot and into your mould. 5-6 minutes doesn't sound an awful long time, but compared to many resins that is an eternity. There's plenty of resins out there with 1 or 2 minute pot lives. Now for the process that I'm going to show you and how I do my moulding to make sure I don't get any air bubbles in it, the 5 or 6 minutes is a minimum requirement, because unless you're doing things really efficiently it can go wrong, and then you end up with a lot of cured resin in your mixing pot, which is no good to anyone. Demolding time. It's a nice short demolding time. It means that I can generally get 2 casts an hour out of each mould, which is not bad. It's not industrial processing, but for a home user, 2 casts an hour's not bad at all. So that's really what I want to say about those parts. We'll skip on, I'll just get ready and we'll skip on and we'll show you how I actually go through casting. Well, now that we're ready to start actually casting, get yourself a couple of things. Get yourself some safety glasses. You don't want any splashback of resin ending up in your eyeball, so some form of glasses over your face. It's always better to be safe than sorry. I need to take my ease release, okay, and I'm going to spray just short sharp bursts into each of the holes. So then I'm going to take my brush And I'm just going to agitate that in, make sure I'm getting that in all the areas. When you start casting and getting used to it, you'll get used to the areas that want to be voids, i.e. trap air and stop the resin flowing in. I'll show you how I combat that, but one of the first ways you combat it is by making sure you've got lubricant really into those areas. You don't want it flowing in lubricant, but you want a nice even coating. And that's where the aerosol really helps, because it lets you get in. Now this particular one, I've obviously, as far as you're concerned, I've just recently cast this, but I've actually spent one full day just learning my mould and pouring several runs, just so I can get an idea of any of the issues I've got and any of the areas which might be a continuing issue. This centre one here is not the easiest one to cast. The rest all need a bit of work to get into cast but they will, whereas the centre one is definitely the most difficult one I've got. So that's the first part of the preparation, and we're back shortly. Now that I have the mould release rubbed in and sprayed on, it's a case of measuring out my resin. Now, what I like to do is work it out so I know the exact amount of resin, or as close as my scales can give me to the exact amount of resin I'm going to need for each run, so I'm not going to run over or run out or make too much or too little. So it takes 21 grams to mix this, but as this measures in single gram units, I need to measure out 22, which means I need 11 grams of part A and 11 grams of part B. So it's just a case of pouring in until I get to my 11 grams. So that's 11 grams of part B, which is the thicker, more viscous substance. I always pour that one first because it allows the flow of how I'm doing things. Put my fresh cup on, zero or tear my scales. Get yourself a nice accurate set of digital scales, it's easier to use than your analogues. Oh, sorry, hang on. Just a wee quick shake of part A. Now 11 grams of part A. Too much, so I just need to take a bit out. 11 grams of part A. So that's me get 11 grams of both parts. I'll just put that out the way, and that out the way, and my scales out the way. Next thing I'm going to do into part A, as I can't really see that anymore, is I'm going to add some pigment. Now I need tiny amounts of pigment, and the reason I do that is grey bases look better than any colour of base. Just scraping a little bit off the rim because I'm a messy bugger and I've got it all round the screw thread, so I don't need, but you can see how little pigment I'm using there. So this tub's going to last me. I've just got it everywhere again. Messy bugger, that's why you wear gloves. Let me get a tissue just to take some of that off of here. And I'm going to mix this in. So you can see that's changed part A, a nice thick black colour. And it'll be a case of mixing part A and part B together. So just let me get my mould and everything back in position. I'll be back just in 2 seconds. So that's everything positioned. I've got it all in the camera viewer, so I just wanted to make sure I had all that so you could see it. I mentioned that I've got a pot life of 5 minutes. What that means is once I mix these two components together, I have 5 minutes to get it completely into the mould and then can't touch it. 'Cause if I start touching it after that, I might start getting jaggy points or whatnot. So what I'm going to be doing is adding this. Now this is the runnier one, so it's the less viscous, less thick material. So this is the one that I want to add to the other to try and minimise air bubbles. So it's a nice gentle flow down in a gentle stream and then scrape out every part I can get out of this. So I've got that out and I've probably wasted maybe 15-30 seconds or so. So that's in there. Now I need to mix that until I've got a consistent grey colour throughout. If it's not consistently mixed, then it ain't going to set. It doesn't take much to get it mixed though. Now this is a high detail mould, so what I have found is that to get it to work properly and to keep all that detail and minimise air bubbles, I add in small bursts, but I've only got the pot life to get it all in here. So a tiny amount in here, same in here into the recessed and detail areas, down into that one I know is a problem area from experimenting. Same with that. I've got a really deep cog here, so a little bit into there. This is the baby that just doesn't want to get all the detail. Actually, it looks good with what you would technically call an error, and I might actually prefer it with what you would technically call an error. It's just not the way I visualised it when I first did it. Too busy looking at this and not paying attention to what I'm doing. So a little bit in there, and this is one of the harder ones as well because it's a cog that's all resin, so you can see it's not all the way in. I've still got a lot in my pot, but I'm running out of time, and what I need to do is squeeze and agitate and move to get the air bubbles out of those areas. You can see some rising up here, so they're coming out of that bit. There we go, that's some out of there and that one. So just that squeezing and agitating just knocks the air bubbles out. Now I need to take my pin because I've found that sometimes those air bubbles want to go back into the bloody beast, despite you working hard to remove them. Air bubbles should always rise, but for some reason the tension in the material sometimes pulls them back into place, which is not what we need. So again, working to a clock here. I'm not sure where we're at, but it's probably at least halfway through the time that I've got to play with. So take that and a couple of drops, again just a centimetre, 2 centimetres up, knocks them. Get the rest in before it starts going off, because there's one other bit I want to do, and that'll be taking my vibration tool loosely on its own. You could do it on your vibration table. I've stopped using my vibration table because I can't make it as level as I can make this glass. So I just sit on the ordinary table and don't use the full-on vibration table anymore that I built. I will sometimes use that sort of idea when I'm doing the plaster, but on the resin it's more important to work this way, I feel, from experience now of doing this for quite a while. So it's just looking at these. I don't want them over the top. I want a nice level surface, because you want your bases level. If you put too much in, it will belly up. So it's just by the drip, get the right amount. Now I do have a little bit of excess. Thank you, Bill, for the idea of using trivets. That's Terrainaholic if you don't know them. I just take the little couple of bits of excess I've got and drip it in here, and I can use these as tiles or something like that. So as I said here, I need 21 grams. It's too difficult for me to measure 21, so I measure 2 11s, and there's my gram of waste resin that would otherwise be left in here if I didn't prepare something else to put it into. Air bubbles come up there, as you can see. So I've probably got half a minute or so. I can see some change to the colour to the resin, so it's starting to go off, starting to cure already, which means it's getting to that stage where I just won't be able to touch it. So I'm going to sign off for the next 20 odd minutes, and we'll come back and we'll demold these in about 20 minutes time and give you an idea as to what they look. Oh sorry, no, I'm running out of time and I haven't shown you, I'm too busy talking. Take my tool and just up tight to the wall. Maybe too late. Maybe too late to do anything on this one now. I'm taking my time and not wanting to speak, so I'm trying to show you everything and forgetting some things. But I take my tool just along the edges. And those final squeezes just in. Be careful you don't squeeze too hard or you have resin flying through the air, hitting you in the face and sticking to your hair. That didn't happen to me last night when I wasn't paying attention, so I was too busy watching BBC Nature. With the polar bears, and it was bloody great, but I was busy watching that and I squeezed and it went ping! Honest, it didn't happen to me, it was someone else. Okay, back shortly. Well guys, that's been long enough, so it's moment of truth time and undoing them. What I always do is, for my own peace of mind, is my excess ones I take out first, just to make sure everything looks fully cast. That way if I've looked at the clock wrong and got it wrong, at least it's only the excess that I'm ruining and not my actual moulds that I was looking to do. So they came out fine, which I knew they would. Next section is decasting, and it's just a case of gently peel at the side and then take out. So as we can see, that's come out pretty nice. Again, it's come out really well. When I'm initially learning a mould, I tend to sit them pieces out, slight air bubble there, but again that can pass as corrosion because it's supposed to be a ruined set. Again, details come out nice and clean. You can even see, I hope you can see on video, the grooves there of the piano wire that I'd cast to give it the long screwed rod look. Flung that away by accident. Next one. Again, detail seems to have come out absolutely fine. This is the one that gives me the most problems, but as I said, I kind of like the way it looks anyway, because it's as if the cogs have all rusted at the high point, which is the way you'd expect it to go if it was getting damaged. So it's the hardest one for me to cast, but I'm happy with the way it looks, even though it wasn't my original vision. Again, you can see how well my cogs have come out there. Again, nice and clean, crisp cast. If you don't do the agitation and the squeezing, a lot of these high points do not want to cast, but that's learning your mould. It takes a few shots. Took me 3 to really get a good handle on this mould, and then all the ones I've done since. You can even see the chain there has come out nice and lovely. So there's a loose chain supposedly lying on that base. Again, this one, if you don't agitate it and squeeze it, you can lose all that lovely high resin detail. So that's the bases cast. It's now a case of just taking the flash and cleaning them up. There might be some bigger bits that come off actually when I picked up, didn't even need it, and that's it. So next video we're doing this series is I'm going to paint them up and show you what they look like when I paint them up. I'll tell you the tip in this one, and I'll tell you again probably in the paint up one in case you don't go to that video, is before you paint these you need to thoroughly wash them like you do all resin products in hot water, almost as hot water as your hands can stand. You don't want it boiling water because it will then soften the actual resin and make it pliable and bendable, which for a base you need to keep it flat. So you don't want to go that hot, but you need to go really hot with a good soapy water to take all the ease release off, because the paint won't stick to the ease release. So you need to scrub it all off, get it nice and clean, let it dry before you go in with your primer and painting them. So hopefully this video's been of help, and that's it. Take care, my friends. Bye bye.